Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here for the Hell in a Cell 2021 on 6/20/21. Overall, I guess you could consider this a good enough show. Not, again, I hate network specials at this point because, truthfully, they don't have a big show feel. I am a fan of the three of the four major pay per views a year, but honestly, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, and WrestleMania are the only times that WWE feels weekly relevant. Other than that, you can skip these things and it doesn't matter. And this is as a fan of 32 years. Anyway, kickoff show. Caleb Braxton starts by introducing panel members Lawler, JBL, Pete Rosenberg. Run down the lineup for tonight. Mandy Rose versus Natalia for the kickoff show. They recapped Bailey and Bianca Belair feud, all this. They show highlights, and there we go. Then we go to Natalia with Tamina defeating Mandy Rose with Dana Brooke at 9:39. Basic three-show match, longer than it needed to be. You could have done the same in 4.5 minutes, and it'd been fine. Natalia had an early advantage, side headlock. Rose reverses, Natalia escapes and gains control. But then Rose gains control, Natalia breaks free. Basically, they end up in a stalemate. Natalia works over the arm. Rose makes it to the ropes. Rose takes over and she pulls Natalia into the top rope. Rose then slows the pace down and goes for the body scissors. Natalia hits a body slam and breaks the hold. Rose then locks it on an abdominal stretch. Natalia reverses it. Rose fights to the back and reverses the hold again. Natalia breaks free again and then Babyface goes nuts. Natalia tries to place Rose on the top rope, fights her off. Rose hits a flying crossbody for a near fall. Rose hits a backslide and jumping knee for another near fall. Traded pin attempts, and Natalia finally hits the sharpshooter for the win. Michael Cole kicks off the main show and notes that this is the last pay-per-view in the Thunderdome before they return to the road, finally. And Hell in a Cell Women's Champion Bianca Belair defeats Bayley 1942. Good match. They both work hard and did a lot of innovative stuff. Kendo sticks and Belair uses a series of slams early and clotheslines to start the match. Bayley rolls outside the ring and brings in a couple of chairs. Belair tries to go after one of the chairs. Bayley kicks it out of the ring. Then Bayley tries to hit Belair with a chair, but drops it down and rolls up Bayley for a near fall. Belair then tries to use her hair, and then Belair gets rid of the chair and backs Bayley into the corner. They fight on the top. Belair uses a backflip to avoid Bayley. Bayley takes over and sends Belair shoulder first into the post. Bayley then slows down the pace and works over the arm. Bayley then brings the steps into the ring, traps Belair's hair. Belair fights back. Bayley regains control with a knee in the corner. Bayley then ties Belair's hair in bottom rope. Bayley charges Belair and she moves. Bayley hits the steps. Belair throws her in, but then there's another move out of the way. Bayley pulls down kendo sticks and they're tied together. Places them in between the cage and the ring. Basically, Bayley beat Belair with a chair and ties Belair to it. Belair fights back and knocks Bayley off the chair. Bayley runs wild and runs at Belair. Gets the chair up. Bayley injures her knee in the process of all this. Belair then ties her hair to Bayley and beats her around ringside with a bunch of weapons. Bayley crawls to the door and begs to get out of the cage. Belair kicked her into the cage door. Bayley uses a ladder of all things to regain control. McCaffrey couldn't believe Bayley found a ladder under the ring. Why not? We have no idea. Bayley sends Belair into the ladder and she traps Belair into the ladder and stomps on it. Bayley then hits the rose plant. With Belair trapped in the ladder, Bayley couldn't make a pin because of her injured knee, can't follow up. Belair rolls up Bayley for near fall. Bayley counters and uses the ropes for another near fall. Cole pointed out that grabbing the ropes isn't a DQ, and then Belair slams Bayley into the corner. She traps Bayley in the ladder and climbs to the top. Belair attempts for 450s. Bayley's out of the way. Belair lands on her feet and hits a senton. Belair gives Bayley the KOD into an open ladder, and that's that. In the back, Megan interviews Belair. She notes the match was tough. Bayley gave her the beating of her life. She'd never forgive Bayley. Lashley is up next with the ladies and MVP in his locker room. Alexa Bliss sits on the swing, discussing her match with Shayna Baszler later tonight. Expect the unexpected, she says. Seth Rollins defeats Cesaro in 16 and a quarter minutes. Match runs longer than it needs to. Cesaro makes an entrance. Rollins jumps in from behind. Cesaro slams in a back body drop to get an advantage. They fight around ringside. Cesaro hits uppercuts, and then Rollins fights back and sends him into the buckle. Rollins then rakes his eyes, hits DDT. Rollins slows the pace down and hits a bunch of knees. Rollins attempts a suplex, but Cesaro counters with a suplex of his own. Rollins recovers and sends Cesaro to the floor. However, Cesaro didn't know where, and he swung wildly. Rollins then takes advantage and hits the knee off the apron. Rollins follows up with a springboard knee into the ring for near fall. Rollins slows the pace of the match down again. Cesaro comes back with uppercuts, and then Rollins attempts a stomp, but Cesaro counters with a power slam. Cesaro climbs to the top, but Rollins cuts him off. Flying cross body, but Rollins rolls through for near fall. Rollins hits Cesaro in the back of the neck for near fall. Rollins beats Cesaro and hits a Falcon Arrow for near fall of his own. Rollins then goes for a stomp, but Cesaro hits a discus clothesline. Cesaro catches Rollins' big string and transitions into the sharpshooter. Rollins thinks about tapping, but then tries to grab the rope. Cesaro locks in the sharpshooter a second time, and Cesaro stomps on Rollins several times. Goes for the sharpshooter a third time. Rollins counters with a small package for the win. Alexa Bliss defeats Shayna Baszler with Nia Jax and Reginald in just under 7 minutes. Very basic match, not a lot to it. Dragged at times to the point where they didn't even need to make it that long. And there's absolutely nothing to it. Bliss did use magic and hypnotize Jax, helping her to get the win. In the back, Megan interviews Baszler, Reginald, and Nia Jax. Baszler isn't worried about Bliss's threats earlier. Jax agreed, but there's nothing wrong with a little good luck. Bliss stares at Baszler, but Reginald jumps up on the apron. Bliss is distracted. Baszler backs her into the corner. Bliss avoids Baszler and takes over with a bunch of forearms. Reginald then jumps back onto the apron and covers his face so she can't hypnotize him. Baszler jumps Bliss from behind, but Bliss just smiles. Baszler slams Bliss for the near fall. Baszler then works over the arms, traps Bliss's arm, and stomps. Bliss is screaming in pain, but then she starts laughing, which I think is an interesting layer to the character, to say the very least. Baszler then goes back to the arm, but tries not to look Bliss in the face. Bliss yells at Baszler to look at her. Baszler is in some kind of trance and releases the hold. Bliss fires up, hits DDT for near fall. Bliss then knocks Baszler to the floor. Reginald goes to check on her. Bliss starts staring at Jax. She hypnotizes her and made her slap Reginald in the face. Bliss and Jax look at each other, and then they screamed. Baszler goes for the clutch, but then Bliss breaks free. Shaw follows up with Twisted Bliss for the win. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in about 12 3/4 minutes. Decent match. Story of the match, Owens comes in with a throat injury and then ends up with an arm injury during match. Owens has an early advantage and chops Zayn in the corner. Owens coughs throughout the match, selling the throat injury. Owens is in control but has difficulty breathing. Zayn takes over, but Owens shot back with some hard strikes. Zayn drops Owens' throat first on the bottom rope. He follows up with a dive to the floor. Owens grabs his arm, rolls back into the ring, and then continues the pacing. Zayn continues to work over the arm. Owens fights back and stomps Zayn in the corner. Owens can't move his arm, so he rocks Zayn with a clothesline and uses the other arm for it. Owens then attempts a swanton off the apron, but it's just there. Zayn then hits a Blue Thunder Bomb for near fall. Owens fights back with one arm and goes for a stunner. Zayn counters with a suplex near fall. Zayn busts his mouth, and then Zayn goes after Owens on the outside. Gets caught with a stunner. Zayn barely beats the 10 count to get back into the ring. Owens and Zayn end up brawling, and Zayn drops Owens' throat first onto the bottom rope for the second time in the match. Zayn hits a Helluva Kick for the win. I don't necessarily think Zayn winning here does Zayn any major favors, and I think it hurts Owens far more than it helps Zayn. After the match, they show highlights of the Mysterio and Reigns match from Friday. Raw Women's Championship, Rhea Ripley defeats Charlotte Flair in 14 and a quarter minutes by DQ. Anyway, they have a decent match. Finish is horrible. Ripley gets disqualified for hitting Flair with a piece of the announce table. Before the bell, referee holds the belt up in the air. Flair grabs it and basically motions she wants it. Roll up on Ripley for near fall to start the match. Ripley takes over. Flair pulls her off the top rope. Flair slows the pace of the match down with a chin lock. Ripley reverses a suplex attempt, but Flair finishes that into the corner. And then they go to the outside where there's brawling around and use of the barricade. Flair brings her back in, tries several pin attempts, targeted the knee of Ripley. Ripley can barely stand, but fights back. Flair regains control by attacking the knee several times. Flair sends Ripley into the buckle and hits the natural selection for near fall. Flair then attempts a moonsault off the top, but Ripley moved. Flair lands on her feet and hits a standing moonsault for near fall. Flair then goes figure four, but Ripley hits a small package for near fall again. And then they avoid the boot. Flair hits a back elbow for a 2 count. Flair then climbs the top rope, but then Ripley cuts her off with a superplex for another near fall. They brawl into the middle of the ring. Flair takes over with a chop. Ripley and Flair are into the buckle. Ripley gets tangled but hits the riptide. Flair gets her leg on the bottom rope. Flair rolls to the floor and Ripley goes after her. Flair attacks the leg and sends her into the steps. Flair gets figured for a leg lock on, but Ripley has enough on the floor. Flair hits part of the announce table and call for the bell. Post-match, Ripley and Flair continue to brawl. Ripley gets an advantage, hits the riptide again. Ripley then demands the referee announce that she's the champion. Ripley admits she got disqualified on purpose. And then we go to the main event, which is longer than it needs to be at 25 and 3/4 minutes. McIntyre and Lashley did have a good match, but it went long. Lots of weapons, kendo sticks, tables, and stairs. MVP ended up in the cell, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the cell. Stare down to start the match. Lashley jumps in the ring, pulls something out from under the ring. McIntyre cuts him off. Lashley gets into the cage, and off we go. McIntyre grabs the stairs. Lashley cuts him off. For his trouble, McIntyre gets sent into the cage. McIntyre recovers, hits a suplex into the side of the cell. McIntyre then hits Lashley with the steps, attempts a future shock DDT. Lashley breaks free. McIntyre gives Lashley a belly-to-belly across the ring for his trouble. McIntyre uses a kendo stick on Lashley and then sets up a table against the cell. MVP passes the cane through the cell. Lashley uses it to gain control. Lashley tries to give McIntyre a suplex on the stairs. McIntyre fights back and hits a white noise on the stairs. McIntyre then sets up a second table, tries to suplex, but Lashley fights back and sends McIntyre into the cell. McIntyre bounces off the cell and hits Lashley with a clothesline. McIntyre drops Lashley face first onto the chair, continues a near fall. McIntyre jumps up to the top, but Lashley catches him in the hurt lock indirectly. McIntyre knocks Lashley off the ring and hits him with the stairs. Stairs seem to be a major focal point here. Lashley blocks the stairs, rams him into McIntyre's head repeatedly. Lashley goes into vicious beatdown mode and then uses a kendo stick, but through the pain, McIntyre stands up, fight back and grab the chair, but Lashley pokes McIntyre in the eye. Lashley pushes him into the referee. McIntyre hits a future shock DDT, but there's no referee because he was knocked out moments before. McIntyre demands outside referee get in the ring. Second referee comes in. Lashley goes for the hurt lock, but McIntyre breaks free. McIntyre hits the Claymore, but MVP pulls the second referee out of the match. MVP tries to escape, but he's locked in the cage now. McIntyre beats MVP around ringside and hits the Claymore kick. MVP rolls out to the floor. McIntyre goes for Lashley, but Lashley gets the hurt lock on McIntyre on the floor. McIntyre breaks free, backs Lashley into the table. McIntyre rolls Lashley back into the ring, beats him down with a chair. Lashley then avoids the Claymore kick and choke slam. McIntyre off the apron through the table to the floor. Lashley then attempts a spear, but McIntyre moves. Lashley hits the ring post. McIntyre uses a backslide for a near fall. Follows up with a future shock DDT. McIntyre sets up the Claymore. MVP grabs his leg. McIntyre goes after MVP, but Lashley rolls him up for the win. Lashley and MVP celebrate in the ring to end the pay-per-view. Weak finish. Honestly, skippable show except for maybe the women's Hell in a Cell was decent enough to watch. There's nothing here that screams it has to be seen. In any event, hopefully this is helpful. Until next time, everybody.